Hey everybody, Ultimate Oddball here. Today I'm going to talk about blending in. Many autistic people have had to wrestle with the idea of copying neurotypical mannerisms in order to better blend in with neurotypical society. Everything that is considered normal can be learned and mimicked with time and effort. From vocal inflection and tone to body language and euphemisms, it's possible to study and reproduce all of it. The question then is not necessarily whether it's possible, but whether it's right to expect autistic individuals to change each and every mannerism in order to fit the expectations of others. I don't personally believe that it is. Because I was diagnosed so late in life, I had to learn to make adjustments myself. I studied sales techniques books to learn how to be less reserved and more social in an appropriate manner, as well as how to look like you're making eye contact by staring at the bridge of the nose. I studied self-help books to learn how to improve my patience and compassion for others and also deal with negative thinking and behavior. I read literature and poetry extensively to learn more about language, especially the nuances like figures of speech, as well as to help improve my vocabulary. I watched people on television and in real life and paid close attention to how they interacted with each other, how their voices moved, when they went up in tone, when they went down, how much energy was put into speaking, whether they projected or not. I meditated and learned breathing techniques to slow my heart rate. I learned to project my voice through singing. I improved my hand-eye coordination and fine motor skills through playing musical instruments. I did these things and much more because at some point I sat down and categorized in my mind the list of things that I felt made me inherently different from the average person, things that I felt I needed to work on, and I found ways to improve them. Many of these things were incredibly helpful to learn, though I now feel that some of them aren't necessary, specifically forcing eye contact and modulating my voice in a more typical fashion. Much of this is still programmed into my daily interactions. When people talk, my mind goes through a checklist. It studies what's said and analyzes it. Does it seem sincere? Is it literal? What is the emotion behind it? I study everything and everyone, so sometimes my response may seem a bit delayed, especially when you mix in multiple sensory inputs and anxiety. If you use a figure of speech, my brain has to consider both the literal and non-literal meaning, though I've taught myself to go with the non-literal version if it seems like the literal version doesn't make sense at first glance. This is how I learned to deal with euphemisms and metaphors. There are many little workarounds and tips that can help, but it's important to keep in mind that adding things to this checklist effectively adds more strain to my mind, and it's likely that this is the case for others as well. At some point there's a trade-off where the list becomes so long that keeping up in conversation becomes too difficult for me. This is why I try not to overthink things more than my already anxious mind does. If I spend the whole conversation focused on what's going on in my head, then I'm not present in the conversation, and that defeats the whole purpose of learning to utilize adaptations like this. All of this happened in a pretty fluid manner for me, as I've always loved to learn, thrived in teaching myself rather than learning from others, and usually had the resources and time available to me to spend large amounts of my day teaching myself about anything I found interesting. I've been very lucky in that way, because I've been able to pursue knowledge in a way that many people do not. Even though I didn't finish high school or go to college, I spent most of my life so far learning as much as possible, just in my own way. It's good to keep in mind that people learn differently. Someone like me who deals with extreme anxiety, who has sensory processing issues, is naturally going to have difficulty learning in a typical classroom environment. I spent a lot of time in school bored. I didn't complete assignments because they didn't interest me. I often made jokes and clowned around. I didn't do these things because I wasn't interested in learning. I did these things because the manner in which I was being expected to learn simply did not work for me. Well, thanks so much for watching. Thanks for coming by. Have a good day. Hey everybody, Ultimate Oddball here. If you want to stay up to date with my videos, click subscribe. I release a new video on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I do gaming commentary and review. I talk about my experiences on the autism spectrum, and I share my opinions and thoughts on a variety of matters. My hope is that, through my videos, I can help to dispel some of the misinformation, confusion, and negativity people have regarding autism. Thank you for helping me do that by watching these videos.